all you mangy dogs. Swab the decks and hoist the sails. The guns on board be needing some proper manning. Pieces of 8 and a fine wench on your arm, if your work be not too shoddy. Careful not to flounder too badly, though, or you may have to dance the hempen jig as we see you to Davy Jones. Chappie, my boy, on with the show.
Welcome, everybody, friends, folks, foes, and fellow pirate mateys, to yet another weekly edition of Pirate Radio Podcasts. It's episode number... actually, just get our guest to mute out before... I think our guest is not muted out. They hopefully remember to do that. But while we do the intro here... 347 and Diamond, MKULTRA, and Leonard Cohen. So before we get to her and her details, however, let's remind you that I myself, as always, am your host, Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder. WPRPN.com is the website you'll want to drop by, take a look at, sign up as free. All you simply need is a username, password, and email. Be sure as well to check out the show description end of things. Got a lot of great handy-dandy URLs available for your viewing pleasure. Patreon is always a place to drop by and connect with us. Completely free of charge, unless, of course, one is wanting to sponsor us on a per-item basis. Do let us know, and we'll be happy to accommodate you. So we've got PayPal as well, Pirate One Radio at protonmail.com is the email that you want to take note of. It's also very... helpful and something that you'll want to jot down if you're hoping to bring on board any upcoming future feature guests or show suggestions. Pirate One Radio at protonmail.com. Digital love is always appreciated. Passing word on to friends, family, and coworkers, along with remembering to hit subscription, notification buttons, liking, commenting, sharing, all that sort of good stuff. Assuming that you find our content to be of any interest or value. So, all right, to the guest of the week, we'll just give a quick bio overview, rundown of who we have on board this go-round. None other than Canadian poet and author Anne Diamond. Among her most popular works is The Man Next Door, an expose of her one-time friend and neighbor, Leonard Cohen. Along with Canada's poetic legacy, we'll be discussing MKULTRA, Montreal's Allen Memorial CIA-sponsored psychiatrists, Messianic Judaism, a Holocaust of the Gentiles, and Cohen's Prozac period. So there we go. That about does it as far as the introduction is concerned. Oh yes, let us not forget, we should remind you, Anne also enjoys working with writers at all stages of the creative process, from journaling to the final edit. Bottom line, in writing, as in snorkeling, one should never wear a life jacket. Be a mermaid. Dive deep with or without a mask. Or in our case, I suppose, be mostly mermen. So only tried scuba diving once in my life. Anne, I'm not unsure about you. Are you a long-time practitioner of scuba diving, or why that particular illusion?
Where did you find that? No.
It's out there on the interweb
I can
somewhere.
snorkel. Yeah, that's an old thing, but yeah, no, that was I am, yeah, mermaid is me. I am a mermaid, but I don't talk about it that much,
Uh-huh.
Half human, half fish. And yeah, that's still good advice. Don't wear a mask and and drown.
Right.
Scuba dive.
Okay.
See what happens.
Yeah.
So
Drown in
yeah,
the,
no, that's good. Thanks for going back over that. That's the past. Yeah.
drown in the spontaneity and stream of consciousness, I suppose, as per maybe along the lines of Kerouac's first thought, best thought. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was Chogyam Trungpa.
Ah, he stole it.
Anyway.
He had to have stolen it from. He ripped off Kerouac, obviously. So, and let's
Yeah,
not forget,
yeah.
because that's the one of the things we have in common is Naropa. Is it? I think they call it the disembodied school of poetics. A lot of great archive.org material. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, but the likes of Ginsberg, Burroughs, Gregory Corso, and numerous other.
Ferlinghetti.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he might have spoke there a time or two. So, did you ever make it down to Naropa down in Boulder, or we've both you were well connected, it seems, to the whole Tibetan Buddhist tradition. I'm not sure what lineage exactly. Maybe you can fill us in a little more as to how that all came about.
I wasn't really connected to the Tibetan Buddhist lineage, but I have but they have entered my life.
Well,
I never joined, and I never.
you attended Chogyam Trungpa's
No.
funeral.
Yeah, after death, I started, when he was dead, I started talking to him quite a lot, and and the Rigpa Dorje was a Tibetan Buddhist center in Montreal, and they moved in right next door to my brother and me, and I was staying at my brother's. And so you just disappeared. Okay, there you are. And what else about the Tibetans? I mean, Chogyam Trungpa, after his death, introduced me to Mick Jagger, who was still alive. And what else can I tell you? I mean, I read Chogyam Trungpa's books. I think he's a really fine writer. When I was young, I read Meditation in Action and Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism,
Right.
and the other one,
Myth of Freedom.
So Myth of Freedom. And I really liked him, but I never met him. At one point, I did sign up to take a workshop in Vermont with him, and I had bought my place and so on. I was going to stay for a week, and Leonard Cohen at that point blew into town, phoned me up, invited me over, and then went in spontaneously with no prompting from me of any kind. He started going on about the Tibetan Buddhists and why I should have nothing to do with them.
This is in Montreal, back in 1980,
yeah,
I think is what you told me earlier.
1980, yeah. Yeah, and so I didn't go. I never did physically, encounter Chogyam Trungpa. So we're having some feedback. And but then he died in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to his funeral. Yeah, 87, I think, yeah.
Right.
And that was the beginning of a huge, I had a huge change in my life, but it's like, speaking of being a mermaid, like there's a part of me that I guess operates, a part of all of us that operates only on the spiritual plane, and I didn't physically meet him.
Oh, so someone that I'm not sure if right? I'm not sure if someone that you've met here in person or not, but is someone you regard as a friend. Christian Laterreur, it looks like, has joined us from what we can see. Is that right, Christian? Are you with us? Bonjour, Christian. If you can find the unmute icon.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Salut.
Does it work? Hold on a minute.
Ciao.
Eat the mic, Christian. Eat the mic. Mange le mic. Mange le mic.
Mange le mic.
Get closer. And bring your camera down, my friend. Bring your camera down a little
He's
bit
up in
there.
the mountains. Look at his background.
Oh,
You're in the
he's
mountains.
up there in the Himalayas right now, isn't he?
Yeah, almost.
Can you
No,
adjust?
that's the background of the screen, but it's all like shady. I don't know.
You can't adjust
It's
your
okay.
you can't bring your camera down at all to center yourself a little more. There you go. That's parfait. Yeah, magnifique. So all right. Well, we thought we'd have you in mostly as just someone to hang out on the sidelines for the most. You could type away in the chat if you want, and raise your hand as well too, Christian, if you have something you'd like to interject with. Just the little icon there,
Yeah.
at the bottom. Just raise your hand, and we can smoothly transition. So, uh, just briefly, then, how did it? Thank you as well for helping set this up. We really appreciate it. So, how did the two of you first meet, Christian?
Well, we met through the Allen, the action class against the Allen Memorial Hospital, and that's how we met. Like,
The cool
and
collective. The class action.
yeah,
A lawsuit. Yeah.
no, yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
Okay. Now that's
Yes,
something.
I think it's something
Okay. And you've been friends now for how long? How many years?
No, but we both grew up in Laval, Quebec, on Ile
Yeah,
Jésus,
Wait.
in Laval.
So you
But
might have
I'm like,
actually, but you didn't know each other back then, did you? Although you might have crossed
no,
paths
no.
without even knowing each
Oh,
other.
he was
Yeah.
a little kid, I didn't know him. He was
Just
going to Montauk,
un
and I was
bébé.
like, I was
yeah,
already,
that's it.
Juste
Yeah,
un
when he
bébé.
went to
Ouais.
Montauk, I
Petit enfant.
was on Mount Baldy of a Zen. I was doing Zen Buddhism up in the mountains in California, and Chris was on his way to Montauk. Not sure.
He was on his way to where?
To Montauk, and he was going to Montauk to be cannibalized
Oh,
by
I see what
you
you're
know,
saying. So, okay.
and
So, what?
1983, but we were both from Laval,
Right,
Quebec, Ile Jésus,
right.
Jesus Island.
Oh,
And
yeah,
Il
El
Jésus.
Patron and
Oh,
all. Yeah,
I've never heard of
yeah,
that. That's pretty far out. So, uh,
our home.
well, I wonder if they were maybe how many others from that part of Montreal, or just the city in as a whole, were they were so active, like, and that's the thing with the CIA under their rules of engagement, essentially, or the protocol that they're technically, although they don't, they it's how closely they follow these things is, well, let's be real now. They're only allowed to function in a formal capacity outside America's borders, basically. So that's why I guess they use Canada as a testing ground, outsourcing their activities. Is that right?
Well, I
And
mean,
McGill, and
yeah, it's the whole geography there. I mean, basically there were rogue cops in his school, from what he's told me, and we lived 20 kilometers from each other. But yeah,
yeah,
and my
but
school
it's
was pretty
everywhere.
good.
Like, it's not just in our area. Like, they were recruiting like in every area. Like, so like our area was popular because there were like the Allen Memorial Hospital. That's like I think like a lot of us passed through there. But yeah, like
Yeah,
I
well, McGill was the command center,
yeah,
and they brought in people like, John Mack too, and Michael Aquino, and all these aerospace, you know, people who were also, some of them, Satanists, and they were child molesters and child killers, and
John
there was,
Mack, but he was mostly known for his work in the
yeah,
world field of
UFO.
ufology.
He's a good guy.
super nice guy.
Oh yeah.
Super nice guy. I had the chance to meet him and talk with him, like by myself, like 'cause, like he met a bunch of us in class, and like we had a time by ourselves with him, and yeah, and after I met him with my mom, actually at the Allen Memorial, and like hey, like they were talking for a while, like in the entrance, like where there's all like fleur de lis in the round ceiling. So yeah, uh yeah, super nice guy. Like like I wouldn't like mix him with the MKULTRA and the abuse, and like he was really a gentleman. You know, there were like two types of people in that, you know, like the nicest people, or like the people that more evil, like that. Yeah.
So it was kind of compartmentalized then, is what it sounds like, and then maybe people like Mac and others of
Yeah.
his caliber didn't know perhaps the darker aspects, dimensions of
Or
what
they
was
were using those nice people as a facing
good cop,
to
bad cop.
represent them. Yeah, to represent, talk to parents,
Yeah.
or you know, like so. But like,
Well, you know, you would invite him to a conference. He would not necessarily know who else was going to be at the conference, you know, if that's what it was. And you would bring together experts in the field of whatever, you know, space, time travel, I don't know, aerospace, all those things, because aerospace is very big at McGill, and the Allen Memorial had an aerospace um, side to it. You know, there one of my father's psychiatrist, right, was an aerospace was involved very deeply in aerospace. He was a British RAF, you know, Air Force pilot who was downed over France in the Second World War, and he came to Canada, and he became a psychiatrist. But he was deeply involved in the aerospace industry all his life. Now that also connects with, you know, child abuse and all kinds of stuff is going on. And breaking up. Is that me that's doing that?
No, go. It's. Don't worry about it. Unless, actually, if you could turn down the sound of your speakers, that generally helps to reduce any audio kind of feedback loop,
Let
echo
me see if I can
interference.
do that.
If you can turn that down, yeah, if at all
I can do that.
possible.
Now I just turned it
But I guess you're
on.
talking about your father. The 19, was it
I don't know
six
what. Yeah.
he was taken into the program. And well, how did he become involved in this MK Ultra business?
Oh, well, that's another subject.
Well, that's where I
My
think maybe we
dad was
should, yeah, ba-
well,
backstory
you know, like
context.
we're talking about, if you're talking about, I don't know what we're talking about actually at this point, but there's a whole, you could say, nest of connections in Montreal from that time, I'm sure, and other places in Canada. But, you know, the Allen Memorial was more than just a psychiatric hospital. It was also a research institute for all kinds of things. You know, Marc Garneau, who just died, right?
Oh, really?
He was well, he was around the island, part of that whole, you know, it's a secret society in many ways. I mean, a cult operating out of McGill that with connections to NASA, the CIA, and the whole, you know, you can trace it back. I mean, you know, to the Second World War when they opened up the Allen Memorial, it was, you know, the CIA behind, I mean, it was the OSS at the time, but really it was a military hospital, and they set it up with the idea that they were going to, in part, what they were interested in was training people for use as in military, you know, operations, and super spies and mind controlled agents, and that was always in their mind from the very beginning, 1943, when they opened it. So, and then McGill, you know, McGill has always had this military, you know, that the funding comes from the military. They were involved in chemical and biological warfare projects in the Second World War and then after. So they're really kind of, they would do things, I suppose, that were unethical that you couldn't do in an American university to your own people. But they could do them, they could get away with it at McGill. So Quebec was the perfect place because whatever they liked, they saw the population as perfect guinea pigs, you know, for various reasons. Are you there?
Yeah. And
Anyway, I keep
okay.
going in and out.
Well, and
So
just
Chris, So Chris was grew up in a suburb of Montreal, kind of, by the lake, by the water, and he was the son of French Canadians, and then they had some occult, secret society connections, and that town did too. And I grew up closer to downtown Montreal in a place called Pontview, and uh, and I was like 20 years younger. Am I 20 or 30 years older than Chris? I'm like 20 years older. So in the 50s, I became part of a group of children at McGill who were, gifted. They called it gifted and talented education. Well, I was pulled into a program like that at McGill, starting in 1956.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris was, he was born in 75, so he's 24 years younger than me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is because you were brought in because of your father's part in things with his
Yeah.
military background. And why was he though? Once again, he was said to be suffering from depression, or there was some
My father?
domestic. Yeah, like on what he was
Yeah.
AWOL for a time and got into a little bit of hot water
Oh,
with.
so you know that whole story. You read that story. Well, I mean, there's a whole, series of things, but in 43, when he came to Montreal, I have been told he came to look for Nazi spies. He was trained out in BC at Sea Island base, and then he was up in Prince Rupert,
Uh-huh.
right? I have pictures of him playing the piano in a jazz band and so on. And during the war, he was a troop entertainer. But really, what he was a military intelligence officer. But they would have a cover as entertainers. He played piano and in big band sort of Glenn Miller. What do you call it? Yeah, and then in 43 came to Montreal, and um, he had to have been working partly out of the Allen Memorial. I mean, there because it was an Air Force base there, and they were the psychiatrists at the Allen were very often they were Air Force men, Air Force people, officers. They had this other identity as Air Force officers. They were military psychiatrists. So anyway, so that's how my dad started. I don't know whether he found Nazi spies, but he was supposed to be looking for them in
Mm-hmm.
Montreal. And then he married my mother, daughter of a French Canadian politician, who died mysteriously. It's a whole story, it goes on and on. My mother was the daughter of a politician who suddenly, died in 1940, but was hit by a train and under suspicious circumstances, and could have been murdered because they were killing off liberal politicians. There was another Quebec liberal politician, Ernest Lapointe, who was murdered just a few months before. So it's like the Nazi elements in Quebec were trying to eliminate the liberal elements who were pro-Britain, pro whatever, anti-Nazi.
Oh, I see.
So
And
my mother,
so your Cold War, you and on within you detail all this and lay it all out within the context of your the Cold War
yeah,
book that you published. Is that right?
yeah, I published a memoir about all this. I'm now living in my mother's, about a block from my mother's uh, home in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. This was a kind of a big military center, and I'm now staying here in an Airbnb because I decided this is going to be my home for a while. And because it's center of Quebec, totally, very French Canadian. My mother grew up here, and she was obviously formed by the Catholicism and all of that of this town, and there's also a lot of history here. So, the story. I mean, how did I meet Leonard Cohen? No, same. Everybody went to McGill. Everybody went to the Allen Memorial. It was the gathering place, the downtown on the hill, the mountain, surrounded by trees and grass, and it was a castle, and everybody went there, and everybody was, became part of this program that started in the 40s and developed in the 50s as MKULTRA. and they wanted, and they brought together, military people, scientists, psychiatrists, doctors, cyber, what is cyber warrior? What do you call them? They were cyber experts in cybernetics, and there was, and entertainers. They wanted to develop, public figures, politicians, entertainers who could start to change the society,
That's right.
all,
That's right. Agents of cultural
with the
change.
agenda of the military.
Sure.
Yeah, and one aspect of it was the Tavistock Institute, and they
Mm-hmm.
were involved at McGill too,
Yeah.
and with some of the psychiatrists
Yeah.
being Tavistock trained.
Sure.
And so the whole idea was, change our mind, alter the human mind,
Yeah.
change us. I mean, but at a very deep level, neurologically,
Mm-hmm.
psychologically,
Mm-hmm.
physically,
Steering committees and
re-engineer people.
steering committees and think tanks, along with NGOs, nonprofit societies. Like
Well, yeah, think tanks.
yeah, think tanks, steering committees. So you think it out. You got your think tanks, and then they steer the agenda as they've decided.
Yeah, the Macy Foundation was one of the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rothschilds are in there. And anyway, it was just an assault on society. It started not only in Montreal, but Montreal was a big center for that, and then exported across Canada.
Yeah,
they exported their methods.
Well, it's even been tied to the things like the Kennedy assassination, the Bronfmans, the Reichmans, and the Kennedy assassination among, actually the Bronfmans and I think the Reichmans weren't they competition to old Joe Kennedy during the days of bootlegging era?
I don't know. Maybe.
That's what
I don't know if they were
so.
actually. But
all right, we're playing around with some technical particulars at the moment here, so bear with us, folks. Trying to get myself up and running on camera.
11:33 Montreal time.
Yeah, no, we're live streaming. We got with David Wilkes. He's been first to make his presence known via the comment section, the peanut gallery end of things. We're going to just, while we multitask here, get our Telegram and Facebook more gears into motion. So, but where would you like to take things then? Because I mean, you have this book, The Man Next Door, and I think that's really perhaps where if that's all right, we could jump into, and feet first, or however you care to go about doing things.
What's interesting, I find what's interesting is now when you start telling the story, you immediately make all these connections, because people are now quite well versed in, you could call it conspiracy culture, but all these kinds of connections, for someone with a show like yours who's a host and so on, you're really familiar, and Chris is totally call it conspiracy culture, but
sorry, a little bleed. That's what we're talking about as far as the technical. Very well versed, while lacking a technical producer, big time. So if there's anyone out there who would like to lend a hand in that capacity, by all means, shoot us an email, pirate1radio@protonmail.com. We're here with Ann Diamond and Christian Laterreur discussing MKULTRA and Leonard Cohen, among other things, but those two themes will continue to be in the spotlight here.
Sing a few bars of your song.
Oh my God, jeez, I can't even start. It's just no. Dear Leonard, where are you tonight? Has the bottle got you down on your knees again, lying in loving embrace, sweet sisters of mercy? That old Jew harp laying it down, songs of love and hate, kind of deal, and it goes on for there. Trust me, we have some melody to what we've put together as well. I songwriting, it's a hobby of mine, and my dream is to get like I've been in the studio and recorded, but this is nothing more than, it was a scratch demo actually, was what I had in place here a number of years ago. This is probably written around 2000, I don't know, maybe 10 actually, years before he passed away. And I was hoping to get it to him, but you know, dream on. So, and they say as well, they
You
say
heard that song?
you should never meet your heroes. Be careful. You should never want to meet your heroes.
Good
So
advice.
yeah, and I've met a few like Kesey.
Have you
Actually,
heard the song? Have
go
you
ahead.
heard the one that goes, I fought against the bottle? Because you sort of, you mentioned the bottle.
Yo,
I
there's a
fought
lot
against
of
the
Buckskin
bottle, but
Boys
I
and
had
all
to
that
do
kind
it
of. Sure.
drunk.
Oh, is that one of his
It's
songs?
got a dime. I took my diamond to the pawn shop, but that don't make it junk. That's my favorite song.
Yeah. It rings a bell for sure. So I mean, he's just got such a catalog. Obviously, I have to
I don't know.
revisit, and have had enough of. Oh, it's reconnecting. So, no idea what's going on here, folks. Bear with us though. We're going to. I mean, maybe Christian, you could do a little side search, mute yourself out, do a little side search on the lyrics that she's just cited there, quoted, and see if you can find exactly what song of Leonard's that was from. Um, like let's have a little game here before we get too far, rolling along as far as uh, you know total what is it? Fanatic, utterly. I mean, he was the mensch is the word, I guess, that the Jews. It's a Yiddish term. It just means like a big man kind of deal. Like he was really something, I guess. So, but Sisters of Mercy, everybody knows Suzanne, Hallelujah. What other songs? What was the one that you, in one of your interviews, you said the heart with no companion? Great tune, but you're not really one wants to hear much of it these days. So, and I understand how that works sometimes. So, uh, but I mean, the future, democracy is coming to the USA, right? As we were talking during the pre-interview, trying to get Jitsi up and running. That's something we didn't mention here yet either, folks. We have this new VoIP, voice over internet protocol we're working with, as compared to Teams, the new Skype, as if that wasn't already bad enough. That with Jitsi, working out all sorts of technical issues to get things smoothed over. But uh, the future, yeah, I've seen the future, and it is murder. But I think that's the same song where it talks about, or he sang about rather, uh, your loyal servant has been sent. To say it loud, say it clear. That you know, the future, it is murder. That was one of the things I was hoping to do before we actually kick things off here, was get the find the actual quotes themselves verbatim. But Cohen Live, did you hear that one? I'm not sure if Christian is much of a fan or not, but uh, fanboying out, I guess. Yeah, that's one way of putting things, I suppose. But did you ever hear Cohen Live at all, Ann? Or did that came out in the early '90s? I thought it was a great release, a great, really, really impressive. Really, and that was a time where he was, with the way that people's careers ebb and flow. That he was, because the future release was really well received, and I would say rightfully so. But have you thrown out all of his CDs or records, or what exactly? Presumably, you still have a few at your disposal in your catalog. Have we lost you completely? What's going on there? Let's see. Are you frozen up? Oh, no. Maybe we. No. By God. I think I was. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. We're still live. I'm just here talking to myself, basically. So this is odd. Now I cannot hear any of you. So I'm gonna drop out here and try to return and see if we can reconnect on via Jitsi. The reason we decided to go with Jitsi as well, folks, is because uh, it's after. Whoops, oh, that turned on. See if this works a little better now. Actually, with the camera turned on. There we go. This is maybe what we're looking for.
Unthinkable. So then they just block out everything. But there's a big chunk of the
Right
population
on.
now that gets it.
Can
they're
you hear
making
me?
the connection.
I'm sorry. I got
Yeah, you're back.
the whole
Right.
everything. Like you were probably talking to me. I was going on at just verbal diarrhea, I guess, word salad or what have you. But I couldn't hear you. And then I checked the settings here. It's like, where are they? Oh, it's like, oh, so
We were talking to each other. I don't know
you're
if you heard
no, you're
us.
probably talking to me. I was talking. We were talking over each other, but only I ended up getting recorded here via the OBS and the live stream. But where were we?
Okay,
What
you
was
were
the last?
gone.
What was the last? I was asking you about Cohen Live and some of the favorite songs or the songs that come to mind. Suzanne, you heard all that, like Sisters of Mercy, of course. Everyone knows there is a war. There's a war between the left and right, a war between the man and the woman. There's a war between the ones who say there is a war and the ones who say there isn't. I mean, check
Yeah.
mark. Like, who is this dude? Who's that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I find, there's different eras of Cohen. I mean, he's got
Right.
hundreds of songs, I
Sure,
guess. I don't know how many
Right.
altogether. And I noticed that there's a kind of audience for his early music now, and they're going back to the innocent days of the 1960s. On the Hydra, I see a lot of fan talk about that. They want to go back to
CDs
those
or
days.
records
Maybe it's
or
because
what
I'm
exactly?
connected to Hydra too, so I see their videos and I watch what they're talking about. But he after 1980, he became quite a different. Even before that, look, in the 1970s, he was writing about suicide and murder and all kinds of stuff. So he always wrote about the dark side, but serious dark side and dark politics, and he knew all of the conspiracy stuff that we know now. I knew, I would say the one when I started finding, reading stuff in the early 2000s about MKUltra and so on, I used to always, or the secret societies, I always would refer back to things he said. And I'd say, yeah, Leonard told me about that. Am I
Right.
He knew all about it.
Sure.
So, and he couldn't talk, he wouldn't tell you about it directly, but he would infer, he would make nodding references, and making it clear that he knew all kinds. He knew that everything was fake, everything, was a lie, and all the things people know now. I first heard that from Leonard. But people, I noticed too, there's a kind of fan base that just wants to hear the sweet, early music, love. And he was a loving person. He was such a kind man. He was just so full of spirituality. Yeah. He was also complete opposite of all that. And with the combination of this dark side with his, I don't know if it was real, but fake light side, or he knew how to look like he was Jesus too, the combination was what gave him so much momentum for writing and made him so, powerful and so creative. But people I noticed most people want to just, forget the dark stuff and talk about the light stuff and worship him as a kind of modern Messiah. Very dangerous, because if you don't see the truth, if you don't see the reality behind it, you're really
Beware the cult of
into that.
personality, and is what
Yeah,
I
exactly.
the cult of personality, whoever, regardless of who it is, and
Idolatry. It's idolatry, which is the first commandment. You do not make graven images. Do not
right,
worship idols. But
right.
people will do it. That's the whole
And
problem.
like he had like a bit like the characteristic of like MK Handler, eh? Like somehow like
Yeah.
and like what I think was interesting, like I heard you talk about John Lennon and him and his trip to New York at the same time as like, and that's pretty like that's
Yeah.
cool. Like you should like
Flesh it
yeah,
out.
you should
Flesh it
talk
out.
about
I'd
it.
like to hear it because I know they shared a producer in
Okay.
common, the one and only Mr. Teddy Bear. Was it Teddy Bear himself? Phil Spector. To know
Well,
him is to
Spectre. Yeah.
love
That
him.
was California. Well,
Don't
yeah, Spectre.
don't worry,
No, but
don't worry, Leonard. I love you. As he's holding the gun to his head, as responsibly his retort. Did you know what it was?
yeah, good old rock and roll stories.
No,
Well,
oh no,
John Lennon told that story
he
about
said it's
Phil
like
Spector, but
so.
then Leonard told it too.
Well,
So
well,
maybe they both had guns put to their head, or
you
maybe
think
Leonard just
so?
stole it. But
Well, if
I think there was a gun.
Spectre had the
I
gun,
think there was a gun.
there was apparently a gun, and he said, "Don't worry, Leonard, I love you." And Cohen's retort was, "I
I
certainly
hope
hope
so,
so,
Phil.
Phil." Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. And
This is
he
well,
pulled guns on John Lennon too,
yeah,
right?
no, that's the story. Is that Lennon told the story first, and then Leonard kind of retold it. But I think maybe it happened to both of them,
Oh,
because
he
I think
was sure.
Spector was kind of gun happy, but
Oh yeah,
whether he killed Lana Clarkson is a whole other story.
right.
But what Chris is talking about is the John Lennon assassination that you know, well, that I have written about. I mean, I am not accusing Leonard, but I witnessed, this story. I witnessed Leonard leaving for New York and coming back before he left, before the Lennon assassination. He came back a few days. He left 3 days before, and he came back about a week or 6 days after. And he never told anyone he had been to New York. He left Hydra in December, on December 5th, 1980. I happened to witness that. And then I happened to witness him coming back on December 14th, 1980. And John Lennon was killed on the 8th of December, so in between. And I witnessed a physical, I witnessed a whole thing at that time, but not knowing what I was seeing. Leonard never said he'd been to New York, because then everybody would have gone, "Oh, you were in New York when John Lennon was killed." And he didn't even say he'd been off the island. You had to kind of know him or be around his house. Nobody knew he'd really left the island, but he came back. And he came back, he had a gun. He had a handgun. And it was on his kitchen table. And so during the month, that, before, just a bit before Lennon was killed, and then for the rest of the month, Leonard was on Hydra, but he was away for a 10-day period, the week that Lennon was killed. There was it, hotel stationery from the Algonquin Hotel that proved that he was in Manhattan, about a kilometer from the Dakota where Lennon lived, right, where Lennon was shot. So Leonard was staying there the week that Lennon was shot, and that surfaced later in the biographies. Um, so so what Chris is talking about is that I started comparing the timeline of Mark David Chapman arriving in New York on the 5th of December, and where he stayed, which was a hotel in Manhattan, which was in between Leonard's hotel and the Dakota, John Lennon. And Leonard left on the 5th of December, so he would have arrived at the same time as Chapman. He was walking a very short walk to Chapman. Chapman stayed at, I forget which hotel, the Four Seasons, the Sheraton, I think. Leonard stayed at the Algonquin,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could see how, they would then meet up and walk over to the Dakota.
Well,
right?
on
It was
what
very, it
business
was all,
though? On what business what was his alibi? Why was he in New York? What
why was
officially?
Leonard in New York?
Yeah, officially. What reason did he
He said
give?
he was there, all right, officially, because when it surfaced, you see, the thing was, he kept all his bits and pieces of, he wrote poems on hotel stationery and things. So they found, on December 11th, they found the lyrics for "If It Be Thy Will" on a piece of stationery from the Algonquin Hotel on December 11th, 1980. This gets into the biography, right? So he's got to account for why was he there. He said, "I was there to celebrate Hanukkah with my children."
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that was December 11th, Hanukkah had ended the day before. It went from the 3rd to the 10th
Mm-hmm.
that year. So or 3rd to the, yeah. Yeah. And so, he could not, on the 11th, he was not celebrating Hanukkah. And then he came back to Hydra. He came to Hydra on the 14th with his children and their French nanny. It looked like they were arriving from France. And I happened to see them get off the boat in the port, and there they were. And Leonard had lost about 10 pounds since the time I've last seen him, a week earlier or 10 days earlier.
Really?
He'd grown a beard, and he looked awful. I thought he looked like he had some horrible flu or something. He just looked, or like a wreck. And so this is so my over the years, basically, I've figured out the timelines and so on. It looks, well, I think there's no, because, okay, then he told the biographers that he wasn't on Hydra in 1980, 1981. He was in America somewhere, looking for himself somewhere, nowhere. Because if it had ever come out that he'd left Hydra on December 5th and gone to New York and then and there for John Lennon's assassination and then come back to Hydra on the 14th, people would have asked questions. So instead, the official story became he was somewhere in America all through that year. But I'm a witness, I maybe the prime accidental witness to his real whereabouts. And then there are photographs that were taken in 1980 showing him on Hydra, which were hidden for a long time, but they've surfaced. So that I sent you one. There's a picture of him next to a donkey,
Mm-hmm.
and that was taken on just in December of 1980, when officially he wasn't even supposed to be there. So officially he was supposed to be in America, but here's proof with the
Yeah.
beard, looking kind of
Mm-hmm.
really,
Haggard.
wrecked, because it took him haggard. He'd been,
Drained.
he'd flown over to America, he'd come
Okay.
back, and then he was hiding out on a Greek island
Uh,
for the next 6 months, and
laying
even
low.
until the following September.
Yeah.
Laying low on a Greek island, which is known to be an intelligence hub, where I kept, I was there for my first winter in Greece. Like, I wrote a novel, but I thought it was going to be wonderful. It was horrible. It was freezing, rained, damp, never could, couldn't get warm. Um, and Leonard was down the road, down the road. Somebody lent me a heater, he let me take a bath at his place, but that winter I started meeting some of the people that lived there, and English people, a lot of MI6 people. I just kept meeting these people
Probably
with
Mossad as well,
intelligence.
I'm guessing.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, there was an Israeli in the end in the spring, but not during the winter. Uh, there was a we could say an MI6 wet works top level assassination, chief
Yeah, wet works
who,
means for those the uninitiated is that they're killing people. They're getting their hands
yeah, I became
dirty.
close friends with him actually,
Well, and
but
how was
I
it
didn't
that
know that.
did he opened up to you, or you just picked up on this
No,
intuitively?
people, no,
How do
people
you?
didn't really open up to me then, but I was a young woman, like 28 years old, living alone. I mean, I was like, you know, there weren't too many women. I get invited to parties and dinners quite a lot,
Right. Okay, so you had
so then I get to know people,
yeah,
but the people
you had at least one Greek
I
boyfriend, or maybe a more than one. I have no
no
idea,
Greek
but
boyfriends at the time. No, I didn't
no.
have a Greek boyfriend,
Yeah.
but I had other types of boyfriends.
Oh,
Yes, other.
Yeah,
Right.
and even apparently even your detractors claim a cop to the fact that, or at least this is how the story goes, that you were uh lover of Leonard's maybe on several occasions, I guess is how the story goes. I'm not sure how accurate that is,
Well,
but
I tried to remember. We were good friends. We were actually kind of good friends, and people, we had a great, we had a harmony.
uh-huh.
But I started thinking, how many times did I actually sleep with him? I think only twice,
Yeah.
maybe three times at the very
Yeah.
beginning. When he found out that I wasn't, that he said, "What kind of birth control do you use?" And I said, "Astrological."
Ah, so like the rhythm method. The
Yeah,
rhythm
right.
method. Yeah.
So this is very early on. He said, "Well, forget it." I
Uh,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
so he was practical.
I
He was
see.
practical
Well,
for it.
sure, good for, well, yeah. So he wasn't that overly irresponsible, but apparently he did have a reputation for not. And well, first, a ladies' man is how the reputation and how I have no idea how accurate that
Super
was.
ladies man,
Definitely,
super ladies man,
yeah,
like a
yeah.
meat grinder.
Yeah, yeah. So, but and that he did like what I heard from my Buddhist friend in Victoria, and actually someone I'm hoping you can maybe try to help track down after like after we wrap up here. Maybe I'll send a recording off of the song off to you, polished and clean. Take care of it. I don't have much of a setup here. We got Audacity though. It's a little like recording program, and it'll be enough decent enough
Yeah.
for a cool scratch demo, and then you can maybe see if possibly if it's within your means to contact my friend out west. But which in Victoria
Ooh,
area,
ooh.
she's Salt Spring Island, all that kind of good stuff, right? So I'm not gonna say her name right now on
Anything's
air.
possible.
Yeah, small world. But the what she said was that, because I talked about, she was a big Dylan fan, as was I, and still am, and Cohen, of course, and many others. And see, the thing is, people have to make this thing, the art versus the artist. Even if these people are monsters or demon, well, we all have our demons, but
All
uh,
the better.
uh, well, we have to.
Listen, if you're going to be an artist, you better be a demon. You're not gonna get very far
Oh
unless you
my
have a
god!
demon.
Oh my god! Well, we have to.
No, I mean,
Yeah. hmm But
I,
what he,
I think
what
that's
she said,
true. You got to
just
have something that works for you.
yeah, it's just that, of
Something's
course,
got to.
right, exactly, the fire in the belly, and something that has only
Otherwise,
recently
you wouldn't bother.
reignited, yeah,
Yeah,
via this end, because I lost it
I
for
think
so
that's my
long.
opinion.
Oh yeah, no, you're no, and it's
So,
like from Van
so
Morrison, the
what
fire in
is
the
your
belly.
friend's opinion?
Okay, yeah, no, that
What was your friend's opinion of
he was
Leonard?
very
Got to keep you
disrespectful.
on track.
He was, and I was going to finish the point. You're he was very disrespectful to women, and I don't think she went. I didn't press her on it, but kind of got the gist of things. I didn't like. Well, did he slap women around, or was he like Marlon Brando? Here, I'll get the butter,
Not
kind of
me.
disrespectful, or what exactly? So
I've heard that.
last
I've
tango
heard that.
in Hydra, yeah, but
Look, I think he was capable of anything, just on a rotating basis. He never was in any way, he was always very paternal with me, I would say, more than, avuncular. I mean, he was friendly, he was kind, and he was gentle. I mean,
uh-huh.
I didn't have a sexual, or I really can't say I had a sexual relationship. I mean, it wasn't about sex, it was friendship.
Right.
So,
Did the that
and it was also,
yeah, did the concept that level, taking the relationship to that level, did it kind of then change the dynamic?
what?
Did the
Did what
energy,
change the dynamic?
the dynamic, was the friendship then sabotaged or undermined? Did it, or was it
Oh,
still
it's very complicated to
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about it.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
We
very complicated
we
to
don't even
talk
have,
about it. I mean, but
okay.
there was a bond that was inexplicable at the time. So being a 26-year-old, when I met him or so, and you assume when somebody seems very affectionate toward you,
Right.
you assume it's romantic.
Oh, I
You
see.
assume they have romantic feelings for you, but
Uh-huh.
actually, what I really believe is that he had known me as a child in the Allen Memorial, and he
Right.
and he had been and I think well, actually, I have a story. I mean, he saved my life in the Allen Memorial. So he
Oh,
had a sense of like, almost uh, parental, connection to me. He was 17 years older than me.
uh-huh.
That's not a huge difference, but it's almost a generation,
Right.
and so, but people would say, "What's your relationship with him?" Because there was affection, and I could not, you could not explain why there would be instantly from the moment he met me, and that was quite confusing. So, but his normal, I understand that his normal approach to women was often just as outright sexual aggression,
Huh.
which it wasn't with me. Because he called me wee Annie, in the beginning. Wee Annie. I'm 6 feet tall. I mean, I was 4 inches taller than him,
Right. Yeah.
four or
He
five
wanted to
inches
meet this
taller,
giant of a
So
woman.
wee Annie.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, wee Annie, maybe it was a joke, but I don't think so. I think it's because he had known me as a child. He made a few references to that. See, all of this is within the context of MKUltra and all the secrecy. So my relationship with him was under the umbrella of the Allen Memorial,
Right.
which
As was the
complicated things.
case with this young British gentleman, a young boy. I don't even know if he'd reached puberty by that at that stage. But who is this young British chap that you claim to have known through the
Nosing around, eh?
Mick somebody into
You've
the
been reading my stuff.
rolling what rolling.
Rolling, the
These days
Rolling
they're the
Stones. Well, I
Bones.
I
They were
believe.
back in the day the
Look,
Stones.
it is a club, okay? And it's easy. It's not like I have chased after pop stars or known all these pop stars because, I haven't chased. In fact, I've run away from them. But the Allen Memorial was a social club and a cultural club. And if you were in there, like I was in the 1950s as a child, okay, and everybody was older than me, I was the littlest. And so, but then later, there would be people that would remember me,
Hmm.
wee Annie, you know, even when I became 6 feet tall and so on. And one of the people that remembered me was Leonard Cohen. And then when Chogyam Trungpa introduced me to Mick Jagger in the 1990s through channels, and I met Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger he appeared to remember me. And he started, sending out messages to me, and he wrote some songs, and he used images that, from my book. He on the cover of the Voodoo Lounge album and so on, and he wrote some song. He wrote a song called "Love Is Strong," and he sings it in the voice of Leonard Cohen. And it's got this very tall woman with short hair, in the video and so on. And it's well, the thing is, so eventually I was brought into contact with Mick Jagger, but I had known him or met him at least in Montreal during the 1950s, 1950s, basically, when I was just a little girl. And it's all because of secrets, you could say, secret societies, cult type connections, and but this um, club, I call it, or I don't know what to call, they were creating a movement or a multifaceted, society. I'm hearing my voice come back. So that's
Jagger,
what. So it's
Jagger and
all very
Montauk.
Go
Uh,
ahead, Christian.
what?
like Jagger went to Montauk also. Like
Yeah,
that's he
yeah,
recorded a song there too, and like yeah. So like
yeah.
yeah,
Memory
full of
Motel.
interesting facts. And also with like Jim Morrison, they were all like in
They're
those
there.
years, like those stars. I think they were all like trained in MK, like parents from
Yeah,
like the military. Like Jim Morrison, his dad was in the MK, like in the military and all. So yeah, like it's all like when you start like looking into it, like yeah, it's all related. It's all like
the
Pretty
you know
interesting facts.
It's all one big club,
one
like
person,
Carlin talked
uh,
about, and reinforcing here.
Andy Warhol. Okay, Andy Warhol had a house on Montauk Point,
Really?
just a very short distance from
Hmm.
from the facility. He had a summer house or a big house there, and he gave it to
Hmm.
Mick Jagger for in the '75. So Jagger spent a summer in Montauk,
Well, and that's a
and I
good
think
point to maybe we're with around maybe 30 minutes or so remaining, transitioning, pivoting to the whole process church end of your experience. There's so much to get to, of course. I mean, you've done 4 or 5.
I have nothing to do with
No, no, but
Process Church
I know, but
myself. Does anybody?
Mick Jagger did. Hang on just a second. We've got to give a
Did he?
shout
I don't
out.
know if he did.
Hang on a
Yeah.
second. We've got to get shout out to Svetlana, Rodriguez Productions, Gully Rat, and who else are we looking at there? David Wilkes, whole handful of lurkers, in addition to our
Okay.
commentators and contributors here via the peanut gallery end of things. I'm not going to be showing up on camera. It seems like just cannot figure out exactly how to do that through Jitsi, but we've got both Christian and Anne coming through, so that's wonderful. Of course, uh, comments of note here. Svetlana saying she liked Leonard until she found out he was a Jew. I don't know why it would have taken her so long to pick up on that, but anyways, actually listen to his lyrics. It's like a name like Cohen means priest, right? So first we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin. I mean, yeah, there's so many things he was just laying out there in people's faces. There's no doubt. But at the same time, I was listening to that song the other day, and he's like, I don't like your fashion business, mister. I don't like those drugs that keep her thin, I think is what he says. So
Keep
uh,
you
yeah,
thin.
keep you
Yeah.
thin. I don't like what happened to my sister. First we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin. I mean, that's so it's like, there's the two sides to, once again, it's like very very three sides to the Cohen coin. Uh Light, dark, and kosher, perhaps, is one way of looking at it. So uh, uh I recall the
Yeah.
song Everybody Knows is about all I know about him, is what Gully Rat adds here. So keep your comments coming, folks. Questions as well for Anne or Christian, uh, regarding MKUltra, but it's mostly Anne and her book, the Man Next Door. What a story! And I'm gonna see if I can maybe try to. Well, we'll get into the little process church business, because I think that's really interesting, especially given the scene that that there was back in the
Yes.
day in Montreal. But
Well,
your
I don't know about
detractors.
Process at all.
Well, no, I know, but hang on. But there was a scene that you witnessed. Not saying you were a member. Does there anything to do with them? Their magazines were too expensive, is I think one of the things you said, and I can, it's like fine. But
Oh yeah.
Jagger got into the whole process church thing for a time, and he was very much exploring the dark side, and that's one thing that musicians and artists do, and writers, they bring
Yeah.
out,
That's one
they
thing
you
they
have
do.
to, pardon me.
That's
you,
one thing they
you
do.
the,
Well,
the
they have to.
shadow
Somebody's got to do it.
the shadow work. I mean, it's got, exactly,
Yeah.
we can't run from the
That's what art
shadow.
is.
The thing is, it's like Nietzsche talked about, though, but don't be careful staring too long into the abyss, for the abyss will then start, stare back at you. And also that those that go out, like the Jewish, Holocaust sort of, we're going to get our revenge, taking Manhattan, then Berlin. But those, and what we're seeing now with this genocide in Gaza, can we talk about this without YouTube shutting us down? Anyways, that the that that those who go hunting monsters should take care that they themselves do not become a monster. So, but yeah, go ahead. This I was very intrigued by this one character you mentioned in one of the interviews that you did a while back, the very flamboyant character in the black cape, downtown Montreal, with his process church.
No, I can't remember. Can you remember his name? I can't remember.
Well,
John
the man,
something.
I don't know. The guy in the black cape, that you talked about downtown,
Yeah.
and they had the
Well,
cafe.
he was like,
Yeah, Leonard performed poetry, I guess, and it was open mic.
what was that cafe called now? Now I can't remember. I never went there.
Well, how about these alternative
I know what it was.
filmmakers? These alternative filmmakers that you kind of knew and rubbed shoulders with. You even dated for some time, and this ties into the McGill murders, I guess, as I think you mentioned in one of your uh, talks that you gave, that there were the cleanup crews, the Italian cleanup crews, the garbage
So I
men.
was told.
It-
So I was told by someone who said, never mention this to anyone. He told me a bunch. He wrote me some emails about it.
these
Yeah,
satanic
it appears, and
rituals.
I went into the archive in the University of Toronto library where they keep Leonard's early papers and some of his unpublished poems
Right.
and so on, like files and files of his early writing. And I went through these poems from about the mid 1950s, late 50s, and there were some describing rituals and child sacrifice.
Yeah, dismemberment of
That's what,
women.
I mean, imagistically, but nevertheless, that's what, I took from it. And
Dark.
they weren't published.
Gee, I wonder why.
That's probably from the Jew background, like because like that Talmud
Sabbatean.
and all, like it's yeah.
We got to get into that Sabbatean business. That's right, Christian. Sabbatize Svi.
You bring up the process church, and you can bring up I think that Leonard had connections with Jewish, kind of Sabbatean, whatever, Sabbateans and so on in
Right.
Montreal. I think he knew those people, was aware of that. He identified with Sabotage V. I know that for a fact. He had a book on him in his, anyway, in his library, and he was an absolute devotee. In fact, I think he felt he was the reincarnation of Sabotage V. This was another period, but don't forget the Masons, just
Well,
at
yes.
McGill.
I was going to mention to you, like, because I listened to these some of the shows that you did prior to this, that at its core, a lot of people don't realize this, at its deepest, most esoteric roots, Freemasonry is nothing more, supposedly, than crypto-Judaism. That's how the story goes. Crypto-Judaism. And you can bet
It's
Sabbateanism.
the synagogue of Satan.
You bet.
The dark side of Judaism.
Sure.
Because there's another side to Judaism that has been completely,
Subverted.
forgotten.
Right. No.
Well, with the state of Israel, I mean, there's still Jews who say, that Jews have been totally misled by the
Synagogue of Satan.
Anyway.
Yeah, the Synagogue of Satan.
Yeah, there's still Jews who practice the true Judaism, and that, that's very close to Christianity. They're not really separate in many ways.
Right.
But they have very little standing right now.
Well, and I think it's important.
The age of Netanyahu.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, he's that's the thing, is like, and the whole, it's kind of getting a little bit of the current events, political end of things, but hey, soldier of fortune, Leonard, I think he was really, he was, I hate to say it, but useful idiot, in his role that he played, and the guy, I really respect and admire him in many ways, so don't get me wrong, but how is it that he was able to sign up with the IDF? This was it, the 7-day, one of the wars in 1967. He's a Canadian, for crying out loud. What's up with that? How can he sign up with the IDF? He's not Israeli.
Well, he's Jewish. I'm sure he had a dual passport or something close to it.
Why do they get those special privileges then, whereas others do not?
Well, I think it's very common, but I can't really say I saw an Israeli passport. But I do feel he worked for Mossad.
Right.
It's beyond that. I see evidence that he worked for Mossad. And his So this is but in 73 he signed up to go fight in the Yom Kippur War, and he was there 2 weeks before it started. It was supposed to be a surprise attack, but Leonard was there entertaining the troops 2 weeks before, meaning it wasn't a surprise attack. It was some kind of planned.
It's surprised with the Egyptians, I guess. Was it the Egyptians that they were?
I don't know, I can't really, I'm
Lebanon?
not
Probably
a historian,
prepare
but
the
I read a
pressure.
paper about it, and that it was actually planned by Golda Meir and Anwar Sadat, was it?
Right.
Anyway,
Oh yeah.
that it was meant to, I guess, set the boundaries and just anyway.
Yeah.
It was
So
not a surprise attack, but they
no.
called it a surprise attack.
Well, it's a
Yeah.
surprise to those
Anyway.
on the receiving end. That's a that's a war. Typically, that's the
Well, people
nature.
died. I went through
Yeah.
Gaza and I saw people walking around with wooden metal legs and so on. They had been in
Oh,
that
what in what years
war, and
what years are we talking there exactly?
when I went through there, it was 1980. I went through Gaza one
Wow.
night. That's when I met up with Leonard in Tel Aviv.
Oh
That's where
wow.
everything kind of. And then 2 weeks later, John Lennon died.
But
And I think it was planned out of Tel Aviv. I
s-
think that's my personal belief.
so wait a minute. You're traveling yourself from Tel Aviv to Hydra, and where else were you going at this time when
Well,
off?
that year I had a Canada Council grant. So I decided to go, Greece. I went to the Dodecanese Islands of Greece, and then when winter kind of set in, I went to Egypt. And then I knew that Leonard was playing a concert at the end of November. It starts to get dark in early November, so I went to Egypt, and then I went up by taxi and bus to Jerusalem, and then on to Tel Aviv. And I met Leonard at the airport, met the group, the band, and went to the concert in Tel Aviv on November 23rd, I guess,
So just to
1980.
yeah, yeah, and you were
So I was
friends.
I was a vagabond.
Yes, oh sure, I
What?
totally get it. You were friends, and when did your friendship start, and when would you say exactly it ended? Because apparently there is at some point along the way, this is Mount Baldy, the Zen retreat, I guess in California, where he absolutely
Yeah,
refused
I
to
went
see
there.
you. Is that right?
No,
Oh,
I don't know where you heard that, but no,
well, it's one of the
no, but
blogs out there. He didn't want to
there
see
were
it.
different stages of the whole thing.
Okay,
There
well
were
let
different stages.
okay, so
But I went to study with Hiroshi because he suggested I do it, that was the best teacher I would find in America, and it was better
oh,
than studying
oh,
with Chogyam Trungpa, who was an
oh,
alcoholic and
right.
was crazy,
Yeah.
and so on. And Chogyam Trungpa went to the Roshi, the Sasaki Roshi, Leonard's Zen master.
Right.
Chogyam Trungpa actually went there in 1980, uh, 5 years before he died. He in 81 or something, and
Yeah.
he spent some time there because he was a mess. And the Roshi
Mm.
said, "If you don't become my student, you'll be dead in 5 years."
Oh,
And he was
wow.
dead in 5 years.
And the
And
Roshi lived
so
to be over 100 years old, did he not?
the Roshi had great longevity. I think
Yeah.
105,
Incredible.
107. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah. That's so
so
in fact,
crazy
I think.
wisdom,
Pardon me.
crazy wisdom. That's what Chogyam Trungpa was
Yeah.
famous for, was teaching, and it was crazy.
Oh God.
And so, therefore, it was all about excess, and but there's a lot to learn from that too. And
Well,
it is kind of close. Jagger was new Chogyam Trungpa. Mick Jagger. That's why I went to see Jagger, was that they knew each other, and I was sent there, to. But and then you could say the Tibetans, they have a different view of darkness, of evil, or
uh
whatever
huh.
we call the devil, and all these things.
Sure.
They have a completely different,
Yeah.
kind of cosmology, and there's something to learn from it. They're not they may be demonic in certain ways. They have that aspect of them, but there's something to learn from as we all know, from the demonic.
Well,
You can learn from it. I mean, you shouldn't
sure.
imitate it, probably, or
That
let
there
it
you go.
possess you.
That's that. Well, like
But
the Nietzsche that I referenced just a few minutes ago, and let me just add
yeah.
that with respect in the context of what you're unpacking here, transformation of energy. That really is because you're working with it. That's what my teacher, the one I'll tell you about later when we're off air, that I'm not even sure if she's still alive, but it's your like the wrathful deities, for example. Okay, wrathful versus the benevolent ones. That the
Yeah.
wrathful deities, these
Uh-huh.
are all qualities of our own mind. We are in occasionally the hell realm where we're not happy with ourselves. We're all were pissed off and dissatisfied. And I was experiencing a little bit of that last night. I was trying to get to sleep, and I was, like I said earlier, riding on too much of a bad caffeine buzz and an adrenaline sort of synthesis. So, but yeah, transformation of energy and just practicing your ass. We talked earlier off air, I guess, about meditation and just in conjunction with medication. And it's a really that every moment, like be here now. Didn't Ramdas talk about that? This sounds pretty zen to
Yeah,
me,
good idea.
right? Right. So and just
Be here now.
breathing. Yeah, be here now. Exactly. There you
You
go.
know, but then, you know, the thing is, and then we've all been, we've really been exposed to uh, Satan in our century. I mean, Jung said that. He said the 20th century is going to be the time when humanity wakes up to Satan. That's the learning. That's the learning curve for the
Oh,
20th century, is to understand Satan. And we have spent a large part of the 20th century and 21st century getting to know
uh,
the satanic in our midst. And now I think I think we're about to be overwhelmed by it. You know, when we find out just how much has been going on,
oh boy.
you know, that
Yeah. The whole, yeah.
Chris tells us about, and that he's experienced, and that we've, you know, um, so here we are. I mean, it's kind of the pendulum. I guess it's the pendulum swinging back, but we're never going to be the same. You know, sympathy for the devil is still, you know, that huge influence on my generation, that whatever the messages and the Rolling Stones and their music, you know,
Yeah.
Leonard admired the Rolling Stones. He didn't like the Beatles, but he spoke highly of the Rolling Stones.
Really?
And
He
that, which
didn't
is
like
kind
the
of interesting, because
Beatles.
he didn't like the Beatles. For whatever reason, he didn't like John Lennon. I
Are
tell
you
you, he
are you
didn't like John Lennon.
how do you know that?
He told me.
And that's as far as it
I
went?
mean,
He
well,
just
he told me I never liked the Beatles, and he had nothing good to say about John Lennon. I don't think that was, you know, fair. I
uh-huh.
don't think that, but I think he saw Lennon as a bad influence on my generation.
Kind of like
He saw
Elvis, the
him as
same
a,
as the way Elvis did similarly. Cohen's
Wasn't a
Go ahead, Krishna.
Jew, like Lennon was a Jew too,
No, he
no,
wasn't.
and
well,
probably
maybe
that.
No.
a bit of a nose, like the
Oh, he
Jewish
was.
nose, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
I'm
we'll
not
say that
sure.
for another time. But he was not religious religiously. I've
No,
never found anything in any of the research or I've done or books, and maybe ethnically. I mean, who out of Europe with the Ashkenazi, the
I don't know.
Khazarians? There's so much in the European mixing and melting pot that all Europeans, if we did our DNA test, that most of us would come out a little bit, Ashkenazi or Sephardic or something. Big deal. I mean, it's just welcome to the human race, I guess. So there you go.
Well, you know,
Yeah, but
the Scots and the Jews. But one of the first things Leonard ever said to me when I met him was, the Scots and the Jews have a lot in common,
Scots,
which was something my grandmother used to say, that, you know,
Scotland,
my Scottish grandmother.
really? Do you know what?
Yeah.
I have a theory why that might be. Do you have any suspicion or?
Well, it's the 10 lost tribe. What do they say? The 10th lost, what is the 10 lost tribes? So somehow
Yeah.
end up in
Well,
Scotland.
sure. Yeah. Well, and are you aware of the
Yeah.
Egyptian angle to Scotland?
Yeah.
Do you know who's
Yeah.
Scotia?
I'm a little bit aware of it. I read about it.
Sure. Yeah, and then the
Yeah.
Stone of Destiny and Scotia apparently, I think, is how the story goes. She was an
Yeah.
ancient Egyptian princess, and Michael Tessarian has gone into that extensively, as have others. It's really quite profound, something that a lot of people don't know enough about. But during this time of revelation and apocalypse, where we are currently, I mean, look no further than the Middle East or Ukraine. Khazarian mafia definitely stirring up all the chaos in that region of the world as much as they possibly can, and beyond, obviously, which is really quite
Yeah.
tragic. But
They
that
seem to be
it's
they seem to be a thing here.
pardon me.
Definitely. There's something to that,
Yeah,
for sure.
but apocalypse just
the
meaning that like a
Scottish rite.
Go ahead, Christian.
The Scottish rites, because there was
Oh, yeah,
like
that's right.
that's like
There you go.
Freemason.
There's,
Yeah,
there's,
that's
yeah,
another thing. Yeah,
that's right. Scottish Rite Freemasonry. And as we were saying earlier, that at its core, if you look into it, and there's rabbis that they'll cop to this, and have been apparently they on the record as saying that at its core, its deepest, most esoteric roots, that it's nothing more than crypto Judaism. So there we go. And but Satan himself being just the great adversary is what they say. My thing right now is trying to the distinction between Satan and Lucifer. That's where I'm kind of a bit of a head scratcher. So it goes back a ways, those traditions. But sabotage, I mean, sheesh. And so Leonard thought he may have been he might have been. I mean, he certainly played up. How deeply embedded was he with the whole, even though he wasn't much of a religious observer, apparently, is what you told us, I think, through email correspondence, that the Chabad Lubavitch organization, really notorious outfit, and Jewish mafia, pretty powerful organization, among, well, of all world mafias, I was actually told back in the day, I'm not sure if I was warned or just informed by a Jewish friend of mine I went to university with, that you keep your eye out for this Jewish mafia. They really, make things happen, and you can see that. One of our friends, Robert Morningstar, someone we might introduce you to, actually, he has a far larger reach than ourselves.
Oh, I listened to him.
Robert
Yeah,
Morningstar,
he's
yeah,
interesting.
he's really good.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
great. But that he talked
yeah.
about the
Very
the the the
great research.
Sabbateans. No, I'm sorry, not the Sabbath. The Sadducees, as compared to the Pharisees. The Sadducees, he claims, these days, down through history, in fact, and this is where we have the Cohens and others, that they've largely been involved in the entertainment industry as performers and circus families and entertainers of all sorts, whereas the Pharisees are more like the legalese and legalistic end
Okay,
of.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
Well, I'd never heard it until he brought it up, so I don't know. It's an interesting
definitely. Makes
hypothesis.
sense, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm going to check the
And
comments section here one more time. What more would you like to add then, just before, as we wind things down here, as to
I
what did
think
we miss out
maybe let me
on?
see.
Where did we not go deeply enough into within the time frame that we've been allotted? What more would you like to say as far as wrapping
I
all
think
this
we've
up?
really covered a smorgasbord of
I'm
topics.
sorry. That's just, we had to do it. The rapid fire machine gun. It was, yeah, it's
It's okay,
bullet.
it's the way that
It's
my
like
mind works
it's just
too. Yeah.
it's,
We're not going to get to the bottom of it all.
it is what it is. Oh, and I will say one thing. Besides that, it is what it is. That this one on, I think it was Stormy Weather. This gentleman, he kept pressing you and pressing you. He kind of tripped you up a little bit, I thought, and you kind of. My response, I think, was to, what was it? Oh, your book. It's like, well, you don't have footnotes. Where's the footnotes? Your academic credential footnotes. And my response simply would have
I don't
been,
know.
let the public. Let the public decide for themselves. It's as simple as that. Let the pub.
Stormy weather. Was that Jason Horsley or
I
something?
guess he was a British guy. He was a nice, very
Yeah.
intelligent, very bright
Oh no,
fellow.
he's super brilliant. He's
Yeah, he
absolutely
did like what,
brilliant.
five
Um,
piece part series. People can check that out and
well,
for
I don't do
deeper.
anyway. I don't do footnotes apparently.
Well, it does.
Trying to learn.
Let the public decide. I think because
I just tell stories.
your detractors will say, "Oh, this woman, she's where are the medical records? That's where are the records."
I'm not attempting to be an authority. I just share. I'm kind of like,
Okay, but here
I don't attempt to be an authority on
I
anything
I
because what
understand.
I have only my perspective,
That's
what
right.
I experienced. A lot of what I've experienced has just been experience. It's
Sure, of
just been
course.
accident. I mean, and essentially, like, it's as if my feet have more power, more control of me than my brain. You know, my feet take me places, and
Well,
I witness things,
you're
or that's how my life has been.
right.
You know, I don't know. I have a kind of a intuitive, you know, timing that is really the basis of a lot of what I talk about. You know, just being there for whatever reason, and seeing, and it maybe figuring it out 15 years later. But
Right.
that's, you know, I'm not a thinker.
You're not a thinker. Oh, excuse me? Did we lose her
Bed for
again?
me is,
Go ahead.
yeah. Thank you. It's 12:30
Yeah,
in Canada.
you're not a thinker. So, but
In my
yeah,
job.
you are, or you are a sleeper, and you need to get your rest here. So
We say
Mason's,
an hour and a half.
yeah,
I've been here
that's
for longer.
that's
So
it's
you guys can carry the ball now.
Sonia Galactic and many other comments here. We will do that. Roger Hansen, let you sail on out of here rather than pepper you with more questions that are coming our way. Oh, good numbers via the peanut gallery. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
We've got
really?
all your contact information in the show
Thank you.
description of
Just
things.
drop me
And
an email.
okay, we'll talk again soon. So thank
Thank
you very
you.
much
Yeah.
and happy sailing.
And good night to you. You too. It's
Okay.
morning for you, right? In Korea? What
Uh,
time
yes,
is
ma'am.
it now?
1:30 p.m. So yeah, that
Okay, yeah.
there you go.
You notice my eyes closing? Well, thank you. It's really
Ah,
been fun,
it's you probably have a
and good
long
night to
day.
everyone.
You did.
Thanks,
It
Oh,
Anne.
was
I
a great
did.
talk.
I
Really
did.
appreciate it. Thank you, Christian. Good night, everybody.
Good
Yes.
night.
Okay.
Salut.
Good
Yeah.
night.
Lundi.
Bon
Bonne nuit.
nuit. Bon nuit. Okay, so that was great. Above and beyond the call of duty. The solid, oh, hour and a half, 90 minutes. That's fabulous, fantastic, and courtesy of Christian Laterreur, who helped make it all happen, bring it all together. What an amazing lady! Just amazing, beautiful, lovely spirit, and I wish her all the success in promoting her book, getting her story out there to a wider audience. Maybe we can help her out with the Robert Morningstar uh, coverage and exposure via the Morningstar Report, um, Revolution Radio, RBN Network, of course. As always, there's a great, I believe it's could be, is that Green Terra? Tibetan tradition. It's medicine Buddha, something along those lines. So, yeah, once again, folks, you see these demons as they're depicted in Tibetan tradition, and along with the more benevolent, benign, angelic, celestial manifestations. That the way I was instructed, at least, is that we're to look at them as being nothing more than qualities of our own mind, and it's up to each of us, our responsibility to work with what we have, our the karmic consciousness. Uh, Trying to put this in a more Buddhistic type uh, context or way of referring to things, but aggregates, I think, is one of the things they call them. So uh, we need a real someone the likes of uh, uh, Panyabasa Bhikkhu would be great, of course, have on board and let him unpack a little more as far as the psychological way of seeing things. But thank you so much to everyone who did drop by and join us. A couple comments here. We're going to scroll back up and Sonia Galactic, give her a shout out, of course. Hollywood, who owns it. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, hashtag Hollyweird. My mom used to listen to him growing up before I really got looking into things. Now I recognize Jewish names, know about Hollywood. Okay. The whole revenge agenda spans back 4,000 years. It only gets refined as time goes on. That's interesting. Revenge, yeah. Sabotage V. Not a very nice man. You got to wonder about anyone who, as if there wasn't enough suffering in the world already, right? Think about it. Isn't this material realm, isn't it already challenging enough? Why do we need more chaos and conflict, strife, turmoil, misery? I mean, come on. Just being born is enough, isn't it? So, Masons are Kabbalistic. Yeah, that sounds about right. So the inverted, the black and white, checkerboard squares. Knights Templar, probably two. He goes, yeah, quite deep on an esoteric basis. Jabulon, it's kind of the Masons' Lord Xenu in some ways, I guess. Scientology's got their galactic warlord Xenu running the whole show. So remember, and then Cohen himself was, I guess, a Scientologist, an advocate and booster of this, what Time magazine at one point back in, I think it was the early 80s, referred to as the cult of greed, and it doesn't take much looking into to, you know, scratching the surface to realize that there's there's a lot to be said for that, obviously. I think they own, it's so the story goes, at least, vast amounts of Los Angeles and Hollywood real estate or assets, as it were. So yeah, but L. Ron Hubbard, it was all on the basis of a challenge or a bet. That if you really want to make money, start your own religion, and that got the wheels turning inside his head. So, being a science fiction writer, the rest is all history. Hence, of course, the galactic warlord Xenu. Something you only apparently find out about after you've forked over, who knows, countless millions of dollars, paid your dues, as it were, ascended to the highest level, like OT 7 or 8. Isn't that interesting as well? Operating Thetan. Thetan. Is it Thetan or Satan? And then OT is an OTO, or is it? So, maybe Hubbard leaving little breadcrumbs behind. Definitely a very, yeah. Speaking of devils in human form, very devilish, trickster, prankster, but apparently not a very decent man. Uh, Almost like the P Diddy of his day, really, is what it's looking like now more than ever. So, just my take and 2 cents on things. Let's see what else we got here. Roger Hansen. First of all, Gully Rat. Most people realize, or don't most people realize, yesterday's Templars became the pirates of lore and evolved into Freemasonry. My take. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. There's no doubt. That's why we ourselves, we're a new breed. As, thanks to what Pirate Larry bestowed upon us. And of course, he's now passed away a number of years back, but not before gifting us with this whole Piratas de Dios concept and business, essentially. Pirates of God. We are here on a mission from God. That's one of the reasons why we embrace and promote the WWRHD, What Would Robin Hood Do ethos and philosophy. Half of everything we generate, as far as donations are concerned, whether PayPal, the purchase of pirate merchandise, the swag we have available via Galactic Fire and beyond, Teespring or TeePublic, half of everything goes directly back to the grassroots. Regular listeners should be aware of this. Uh, Need more of you helping out on that basis as well too. It's great that we've got you supporting us as far as links, uh, comments, passing word on to friends, family, and coworkers. Always appreciated. So it helps to make the network grow. But you know, without the PayPal or Patreon support, uh, the purchase of merchandise, digital love. In fact, we might have received a little bit here via D Live. We should drop by and take a look at what we've got going over there. We rarely actually connect to D Live with the setup we've got here. One more reason we should get the Linux device back up and running. We've just taken that basically fuck it all attitude, actually, just tired of having to deal with Linux. Who knows? Maybe after we wrap things up here today, I could get the rag out and finally address this matter one more time, along with recording this really what I consider to be a beautiful, if I must say so myself, it's a tribute to the man and all the best that he represented, embodied it, and stood for, even though, yes, there was perhaps this darker side. And to the point of him even being someone who was at times an altered agent, you know. Uh, I think most of us are aware of how that's said to an Manchurian candidate type uh, way. Certain code words or keywords trigger people, and they whether it's the super soldiers such as Christian or whoever, or the monarch, sex kittens or sex slaves. Um, their alters are triggered, and they become a somebody that they just normally are not at all. So, but yeah, dear Leonard, get that song off to Anne as soon as possible. Ooh, we do have some. What is this that's coming our way? Courtesy of Gully Rat. Thank you, my friend. Uh, Looks like is that a diamond? It looks like a diamond. So we're not. It doesn't even look like we're logged in right now, but we do see that he's. I think he's dropped a diamond. Hashtag good karma. So it's interesting. People they help us out with the support, the charity, and the love, but our credits never seem to change for some reason. So you got to wonder about the way that these networks and platforms are gaming all this. With the Ethereum and the blockchain. I mean, it's being you got to wonder, and you can just imagine the way that the hotshot tech insiders are gaming the whole bloody thing, start to finish. People are being played, hoodwinked. So thank you, Christian, for dropping by. We see your comment there over on Facebook. Yeah, really appreciate it. Can't say enough good things about your support and helping as you have to make this synergistic live streaming magic happen. What is her take on Mick Jagger's original video, "Sympathy for the Devil," and the John Lennon? Oh, and John Lennon and his wife being there with him. Really? Were they? See, the thing is, I saw this. Is that the one video where I think he takes his shirt off? Doesn't he have this like huge sort of devil tattoo on his back? Isn't maybe that what Roger's referring to? I believe I've seen that. It's long before the time of AI too. So Yeah, he was just total trance-like state, summoning some sort of, dark, occultic, if you will, demonic powers or energies. So we'll have to take a look at that. Yeah, drop the link if you could, Roger. So in the meantime, yeah, I think that about does it, folks. Thank you once again for joining us, connecting here on all fronts. We pretty much were running on all pistons. Great numbers, almost as many as 20 here via the live end of things. A whole lot of lurkers, as is typically the case, along with everyone who signed in. Look forward to seeing you again a little further on down the road, probably with World Pirate Radio News this coming Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 on the West Coast, 11 out in the East. And, diving headlong into all of this past week's latest news items and news cycle stories that people are mostly talking about, I suppose, not least of which is what we currently see unfolding via the Ukraine or Gaza, or the rift between Musk and Trump, or Canada, where it's incredible what's happening. And it's interesting, folks. The election is proving more and more to be totally a total fraud in Canada. Think about it. I mean, come on. First of all, how does any political candidate or party lose 50% of its support base within the course of just a few short weeks? That doesn't make any sense. Am I the only one who's picked up on that? In addition, how many ridings has it now, been shown have ended up with these razor thin margins of just as little as one vote? Are you kidding me? Really? Reminded as always that old adage, whether it was Stalin that spoke it himself or not, it could easily have been and should have been, given the man's nature. It matters not who casts the ballots. Have all the democracy you want. It matters not who casts the ballots so much as those who count them. On behalf of Captain Long John Sinclair and all the rest of the crew here down in Skullport Harbor, until we meet again via these high, often all too intrepid digital seas, I'm your host as always, the Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder, reminding you, keep your ear to the ground and eyes to the sky. Tally-ho.
I know. There we be. Having carefully looked over each of our navigation panel instruments,
checking every level, switch, dial, cable, knob, and pulley, by all accounts and indications, we indeed see it's time once again to drop anchor inside Mystic Bay.
Draw an end to yet another week of World Pirate Radio Live.
Remember,
if you're looking for a little more animated online action,
keep in mind we've likely got yet another great free-flowing Rogues Gallery after show
coming up for the next hour in one of our more premium, exclusive, and remote digital underground online pirate hideaways. Also,
If you yourself have a new,
novel, intriguing, or otherwise underreported idea, unique individual, or pressing item in mind, be sure to either drop us a line directly over on WPRPN.com or fire us a quick email
via PirateOneRadio@protonmail.com.
We're always open to exploring fresh creative suggestions, intriguing guest ideas, cutting-edge discussion topics, and captivating themes.
Remember, WPRPN.com member site subdomain links are also always available.
Great for artists, musicians, podcasters, bloggers, social media personalities,
or pretty much just any old landlubber
looking to boost their online visibility, presence, and reach.
Basic personal profile accounts can be launched for just $60 per year.
Staking your claim now helps not only strengthen you and the network, we're also looking out for the little guy. That's right, folks. As much as half of all WPRPN's profits are redirected right back into the hands of the people who really need it most. Community charity. After all, we are the Robin Hood.
You can further embark on your own personal pirate journey by either liking, sharing,
commenting on, subscribing to, or just following us via virtually any mainstream social media platform, including Twitter, Facebook,
Gab,
or Minds.com. So don't forget to become engaged. Until we meet again out on the high digital seas, I'm your host as always, the ship's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder. Tally-ho.